What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. It is time to give you the top 10 toughest schedules in college football for this upcoming 2021 season. The way I came about these rankings was I went through each team. Actually, first I put all the teams, the Power 5 teams, into tiers. Actually, all the teams in college football into tiers, and I had a point system that I used based on the teams that you played, what tier they were in, and I will reveal those tiers at some point. I'm going to do a video on that where I'm going to kind of do the tiers of college football. That'll come at a later date, but that's what I use. So I use a point system, no bias, no personal judgment, no saying, well, that looks tougher than that schedule. No, I use this point system, and it came out pretty good. I think we got a pretty clear top 10. I'll go through the top 10. Also going to give you some honorable mentions at the end. So if you don't see your team here in the top 10, and you think, wow, I think they should probably be in here, well, just wait and see if I add them in at the end for the honorable mention. So let's get into it. The top 10 schedules, top 10 toughest schedules. Of course, we'll do the top 10 easiest schedules as well. That will probably come tomorrow. So again, let's get into it here. Number 10, West Virginia. West Virginia comes in at number 10 with Maryland and Virginia Tech in the non-conference. So two quality teams, two Power 5 teams in the non-conference. Plus, of course, they have to play everyone in the Big 12. They'll play Oklahoma on the road. That'll be a really tough matchup there. And there's a little bit of a point system for the home and away as well. Most teams are going to have, it seems like most Power 5 teams have 6 or 7 home games. I think there was maybe a rare team that had maybe like 8 home games. I think that was an SEC school maybe, but most of them have 6 or 7 home games. So the points really work out about the same. It really doesn't matter as far as the home and away, because you're going to have about half your games home, about half your games away. And you could say, well, Oklahoma on the road is tough. Well, they get Iowa State at home, so it balances out. But again, this is the number 10 team, West Virginia, one of the toughest schedules this year with Maryland and Virginia Tech in the non-conference. At number 9, we're going to stay in the Big 12 and go to Texas. Texas is going to play Louisiana and Arkansas in the non-conference. Louisiana is a top 25 team. I know the FBI doesn't like them, but this is a top 25 team, maybe even a top 15 team preseason. This is a team that has a lot coming back, almost everyone coming back. They had a really good year last year. Remember, they beat Iowa State in the opener last season. Texas better watch out for that game. And then Arkansas, a team in the SEC that is really starting to come on, a team that is not going to be an easy one, especially on the road for Texas. So those are your two non-conference games. And, of course, you got everyone in the Big 12. You're going to have Oklahoma at a neutral field. That'll be good. But they have to go on the road to face Iowa State. So a pretty tough schedule here for Texas. Let's go to number 8 now. Nebraska out of the Big 10. They will face, in the non-conference, they will face Buffalo, who is one of the better teams out of the MAC. Also Oklahoma, and they'll play Oklahoma on the road. So two really tough, or one really, really tough non-conference game, and then a quality team in Buffalo. You look at who they play out of the Big 10 East. They will play Michigan State, who's kind of mid-tier. Michigan, they're kind of mid-tier, it seems like. They could do better. They have potential to do better. And then Ohio State. So Ohio State's going to really bump the toughness of this schedule up. That is a Tier 1 team. And because of Ohio State out of the East, Oklahoma in the non-conference, you're playing two Tier 1 teams. And if you're wondering, the Tier 1 teams are Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Georgia, if you're just wondering about that. But anyways, Nebraska, number 8, pretty tough schedule. Let's go to number 7 now. It is Kansas. Now, this one's kind of interesting. You play Coastal Carolina, who's probably a top 25 team preseason, playing them on the road, by the way. Also Duke on the road, so they have 2 of their non-conference games on the road. So yeah, that's not a horrible non-conference schedule. And then, of course, they play everyone in the Big 12. So what makes this schedule so tough for Kansas? Well, what makes it tough is the fact that Kansas is Kansas. Kansas is the worst team in the Big 12 by far, which means they don't get an easy win over Kansas in the Big 12. They're going to have to play all of the better teams. And that's just how this works. If you're at the bottom, your conference schedule is going to be tougher than a team that's at the top. So Oklahoma's conference schedule not going to be near as tough as Kansas, because Oklahoma gets to play Kansas. Oklahoma doesn't have to play Oklahoma. Kansas They don't get to play Kansas, and they do have to play Oklahoma. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, Coastal Carolina and Duke, respectable, a Power 5 team. I think Duke's going to be pretty bad this year, but it is a Power 5 team and a pretty good Coastal Carolina team. That's enough to get Kansas up to number 7. At number 6, we've got Purdue, the toughest schedule in the Big Ten. They will play Oregon State and Notre Dame in the non-conference. Now, Oregon State is a mid-lower tier team out of the Pac-12. Not a great team, but still a quality team, Power 5 team. And then Notre Dame, also play Notre Dame on the road. We're talking about a tier 2 team in Notre Dame. So, yes, those are 2 pretty good games there for the non-conference. But what also makes this schedule tough for Purdue is who they play out of the East. They will play Ohio State and Indiana, who I think are the top 2 teams out of the East, and then Michigan State as well. Indiana, Penn State, I think it's a close one on who's the second best team out of the East, but Indiana is definitely second or third in my opinion. So you got Ohio State and Indiana out of the East, plus Michigan State, a quality team, Oregon State, Notre Dame, and then everyone in the Big Ten West. Pretty tough schedule here for Purdue as they come in at number 6. Let's go to number 5 now. Mississippi State, the Bulldogs. They are going to have a pretty challenging non-conference schedule. They don't play any great teams, but they'll play NC State, a Power 5 team, a pretty good team out of the ACC, and also play Memphis on the road. Memphis, one of the top teams out of the American, so you've got 2 pretty tough games there. Also, Louisiana Tech is normally a decent team as well at the Group of 5 level. So this is a pretty tough schedule for Mississippi State because of that. Also, kind of like with Kansas, this is a team that I think is at the bottom of the SEC West. I know some people would disagree with that, but that's just where I have them. And so they have to play everyone in the SEC West, all the top teams in the SEC West, in a very quality, probably the toughest division in college football. What keeps this schedule from really being brutal is the fact that they get Vanderbilt and Kentucky out of the East. Now, imagine if they had to play Georgia and Florida or something like that, and this schedule might be the toughest in college football. But that's going to keep it from getting too tough. Now, Kentucky is a quality team. Kentucky is definitely an above-average team. So, yeah, it's not an easy win, but they do get Vanderbilt, so that'll help out, of course, getting to play Vanderbilt. But number 5 for Mississippi State, because they actually have some pretty tough games in the non-conference. Number 4 is Auburn, as we stick with the SEC. Auburn, of course, is going to play Penn State this year out of the conference. That'll be a very tough matchup on the road. And then also Auburn will play Georgia out of the East. They play Georgia every year. Because of that, because of being in the SEC West, and because of playing Georgia out of the East, and usually playing a quality non-conference game, Auburn's up here in the top 5 every year. This year is no different. Very tough schedule. Alabama's at home, Georgia's at home. There are some good things on this schedule, but you got on the road against LSU and Texas A&M, so it's a tough one. And you get rid of Penn State, maybe have an easy non-conference schedule, and this wouldn't be horrible. But when you throw Penn State in there plus Georgia out of the East, Auburn has a very tough schedule compared to the other teams in college football. I don't think any team has just a brutal schedule this year, but there are some pretty tough ones. And I think once we get into this top 3, you're going to start seeing some really tough schedules, starting with number 3, and that is Arkansas. Arkansas will play Texas in the non-conference. They will also play Georgia Southern, who's not bad. And out of the East, they will also play Georgia, like Auburn. And then they're also going to be playing Missouri, who Missouri, some people think could be the 2nd, 3rd, 4th best team out of the East. So you got 2 tough games in the crossover matchups there. You got Texas in the non-conference. This will be a very tough schedule for Arkansas. We'll see how they can manage it. That was last year we saw this team make a pretty big leap, but because they had to play that all SEC schedule, at the end of the day, you lose some close games. The record wasn't great. We could see something similar with Arkansas this year because, again, they play a very tough schedule. But number 2 is going to be Florida State. Take a look at this schedule. It doesn't get any worse when we're talking about the conference schedule because they play Clemson in their division, but they play North Carolina and Miami out of the Coastal Division, the 2 top teams out of that division. Doesn't get any worse than that. And then you go to the non-conference. They'll play Florida. They'll play Florida on the road, and they'll also play Notre Dame. So you're talking about 2 tier 2 teams here in Notre Dame and Florida, plus the toughest that it could possibly be in your crossover matchups. The only thing keeping Florida State's schedule from just being absolutely brutal is the fact that they play in a division that's not too tough outside of Clemson. But there are quality teams in that division. NC State, Boston College, those are going to be quality teams this year. Florida State, they have a very, very tough schedule. You could see this team improve this year, but because of their schedule, I don't think you can get too high on your expectations for the Seminoles. They're at number 2. How about number 1? The toughest schedule in college football for 2021. It's Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech has the toughest schedule. And I don't think it's even, you can debate it, but I think it's pretty clear that this is the toughest schedule in college football. You look at who they played. They played Miami and North Carolina in their division as well. I think top to bottom, the Coastal might be a better division than the Atlantic division this year, especially if you took Clemson out of the Atlantic. So you got to play through that division. Quality teams, Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech, Virginia. These are quality teams. Not great teams, but quality teams. And then you look at who they play out of the Atlantic division. They do have to play Clemson. And they also play Boston College, who might be the second best team in that division. And then you go to the non-conference. They're going to play Notre Dame, and they're going to play Georgia. So this is a very tough schedule. They do have Northern Illinois and Kennesaw State. Now, Northern Illinois is not a bad MAC team, so it's not like you're going to get a gimme there. Kennesaw State probably their only gimme win. So Georgia Tech has the toughest schedule, and they're usually in this conversation as well. They have to play Clemson every year in a crossover matchup. They play Georgia every year. We're talking about 2 Tier 1 teams pretty much every year. And then they usually will schedule another quality non-conference game. This year, they will have to play Notre Dame because of the ACC scheduling there. But this is a tough schedule. Georgia Tech, in my opinion, and again, I think it's pretty clear, has the toughest schedule in college football this upcoming season. All right, I told you I'd read off some honorable mentions. So if your team is on this list, then you've got an argument. You're in the conversation. You just didn't quite have enough on my point system. But if I don't read off your team and your team was in the top 10, and you come and say that, how could you leave off this team? This is one of the toughest schedules in college football. I'm sorry. You just don't have an argument if you're not at least in the honorable mentions. So we're talking about Miami, South Carolina, Ole Miss, LSU, Penn State, Michigan, Indiana, Michigan State, Oklahoma State, TCU, and Notre Dame. All of those teams have tough schedules. All of them were close to being in the top 10, but with the point system that I used, they did not quite make it in there. And again, it was very close. Those bottom teams, West Virginia and Texas, and then some of these teams I just named off, we were talking about a half a point here. So it was very close. And again, you could make an argument for any of those teams being, at least in towards the bottom of this top 10 list. But these are the top 10 schedules according to my point system. And I would love to know what you guys think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Who do you think maybe I put a little high? Who did I put a little bit low? Who out of the honorable mentions do you think maybe should have been on this list? Or maybe a team that I did put in the top 10, you think the schedule is really not that tough and I should take them off. Give me your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.